I never thought a family reunion could feel like a war zone, but that Sunday proved me wrong. The backyard was set up perfectly, white tents, tables lined with flowers, laughter spilling over the soft hum of conversation, but all I felt was dread. My brother, Greg, had arrived early with his smug grin and a bottle of his favorite whiskey, the one he always sipped while trying to make me feel small. I had spent years building my small tech consulting firm, scraping every client from the ground up, staying up nights analyzing data and coding solutions, but in Greg's eyes, none of that mattered. "Hey, look who finally decided to show," he said, voice loud enough for the group around the grill to hear. "Still playing at business? Must be nice being the loser of the family." Laughter erupted from his friends, a mix of cousins and their partners, and for a second I felt that familiar sting of humiliation. My wife, Amanda, gave me a half smile, worried but silent, and my parents avoided eye contact as if the words didn't exist. I forced myself to swallow the anger, to nod politely and pour a drink for myself, knowing that reacting now would only feed him. But I also knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I could show them all, quietly but irrevocably, who I really was. The day went on, Greg continuing his subtle jabs, comments about my old car, my apartment, even Amanda's job. Every word was calculated, designed to make me feel like I didn't belong at our own family gathering. And everyone else, as usual, laughed or pretended not to notice, waiting for the inevitable fight that never came. But I wasn't here for a fight. I was here for a revelation. I had spent months quietly documenting my progress, contracts won, deals closed, clients secured, and most importantly, the contacts that could change everything. By mid-afternoon, the crowd was gathered around the barbecue, the smell of grilled meat masking the tension. Greg had taken a seat on the wooden bench, leaning back, his ego inflated by the laughter he'd orchestrated. That's when I decided it was time. I pulled out my phone, the sleek device cold in my hand, the screen bright and ready. "Greg," I said casually, "mind if I show everyone something?" His smirk faltered slightly, and I saw the first flicker of curiosity in his eyes. The group went silent, sensing the shift in energy. I opened my company's portfolio, showed recent deals, screenshots of emails from Fortune 500 clients, contracts that Greg had no idea existed. His jaw tightened. Laughter faded, replaced by whispers. It was happening. The game was changing, and I was holding all the cards.
Greg stood frozen, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. The room had gone completely silent, all eyes on him and me. His usual smug grin was gone, replaced by the kind of disbelief that only comes when someone realizes they have underestimated you entirely. I could see his mind racing, trying to find an excuse, a comeback, a way to regain control, but there was nothing. I had dismantled his arrogance with facts, with proof of my hard work, with the life I had built while he wasted his energy mocking me. My parents finally spoke, voices tight with emotion, trying to mask their own shock. Mom looked at me, a mix of pride and awe, and Dad's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Amanda squeezed my hand again, silent support in her eyes. The cousins who had always sided with Greg shifted uncomfortably, realizing that everything they thought they knew about me was wrong. He had spent years building an image of superiority, but I had spent those same years quietly creating something real, something undeniable. Greg opened his mouth, his voice cracking as he stammered through weak excuses, trying to minimize my achievements. I shook my head slowly, letting the tension stretch. The energy in the room was mine now. Each person present could see the difference between talking and doing, between mockery and genuine accomplishment. I moved slowly through the crowd, making eye contact with everyone, showing them the documents, the emails, the contracts, the proof that my life was built on effort and dedication. By the time I finished, Greg was pale, sweating slightly under the scrutiny of family and friends. His friends avoided my gaze, ashamed at having laughed with him for so long. His parents, though trying to remain neutral, could no longer hide their disappointment. The narrative had shifted. I was no longer the person they had pitied, dismissed, or mocked. I was the one with authority, the one with the respect of the room, and Greg was exposed for what he had always been, a bully who had built nothing. I stepped back, letting the silence speak. Everyone in the room could feel the power of restraint, the satisfaction of truth, the quiet triumph of someone underestimated finally stepping into the light. Greg slumped into a chair, unable to maintain the mask of confidence he had worn for decades. The reunion that was supposed to celebrate family had instead become a reckoning, and I had delivered it without raising my voice or losing my calm. The lesson was clear and undeniable.
The tension in the room was suffocating. Greg had never been confronted like this before, never had his arrogance challenged in front of everyone he wanted to impress. I could see the uncertainty creeping into his eyes, the way his mouth opened and closed as he tried to form words that would make sense, words that would make him look competent. But there was nothing. I had already stripped away the image he had carefully built over decades, and everyone could see it. I walked slowly toward the center of the living room, making sure my presence was felt. Each step drew eyes from family members who had been silently observing, some shocked, others curious, most suddenly aware that they had underestimated me for years. The cousins who had laughed at Greg's jokes were shifting awkwardly, unable to meet my gaze, suddenly unsure who to side with. My parents were frozen, expressions caught between pride and disbelief. Amanda's hand found mine again, her silent reassurance giving me strength. Greg tried to speak, his voice uneven, faltering as he attempted excuses and justifications. He pointed out past mistakes I had made, the moments he had ridiculed me for, thinking they would regain his advantage. I ignored him, letting the weight of silence press against him. I didn't need to argue. The facts spoke for themselves. My hard work, my achievements, my life built on persistence and vision, all contrasted sharply with Greg's empty bravado and years of relying on charm instead of substance. I retrieved my phone, showing the room emails, contracts, and images of the projects I had completed, the milestones he had never thought I could reach. Everyone leaned in, astonished at the evidence. Greg's hands trembled slightly, his confidence evaporating with every passing second. The laughter and mockery that had once empowered him were gone, replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable stillness. He slumped into a chair, pale and defeated, the mask of superiority shattered. By the end of it, the entire room had shifted. I was no longer the target of ridicule. I was the one holding authority, the one commanding respect without raising my voice. Greg's presence no longer intimidated anyone. He had been exposed, not through anger, not through shouting, but through calm, calculated truth. The reunion had turned into a reckoning, and the lesson was unmistakable. Mocking others and building false superiority only works until someone quietly proves their real worth. The balance had changed, and everyone in the room felt it. The room remained quiet for several long seconds after I finished showing the evidence. Greg didn't get up, didn't speak, his pride completely broken. Family members who had once laughed at my expense were now looking at him with wide eyes, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The shift in energy was undeniable. I felt a mixture of relief and vindication, but mostly I felt calm. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, and truth had a power all its own. My parents approached me first, expressions softening. My dad placed a hand on my shoulder, his usual stoic face finally giving way to a small, proud smile. My mom's eyes glistened as she whispered, "Congratulations." Amanda squeezed my hand tightly, her support unwavering. I had expected her to be proud, but seeing the rest of the family's reactions added a new layer of satisfaction. They had witnessed firsthand what I had built for myself and how wrong they had been to doubt me all these years. Greg finally muttered something under his breath, barely audible, but it was enough for everyone to hear. An apology, though half-hearted, slipped out. He said he hadn't realized how much he had belittled me, how wrong he had been to treat me like I was beneath him. Some relatives nodded, accepting it cautiously, while others ignored him completely. The damage had already been done, and he knew it. For the first time, he understood that respect could not be demanded or faked, it had to be earned. I chose not to gloat. There was no need. The point had been made, the humiliation he had once directed at me had returned tenfold, but silently, without spectacle. I looked around at the room, at faces that had once doubted me, and felt a quiet satisfaction. I had turned what could have been a painful memory into a moment of clarity, for me and for everyone watching. By the end of the reunion, Greg left the house quietly, shoulders slumped, no trace of the arrogant swagger he had arrived with. The rest of us stayed behind, sharing stories, laughter, and genuine conversation for the first time that day.
The family dynamic had shifted irreversibly. No longer was I the underdog or the butt of jokes. I had claimed my place not through confrontation, but through patience, preparation, and letting my accomplishments speak. Driving home later, Amanda reached for my hand again, smiling softly. I realized that the reunion had been about more than proving Greg wrong. It had been about proving to myself that I could stand tall, even when underestimated, and that true respect comes from integrity, perseverance, and confidence. The victory wasn't in humiliating him, it was in finally being seen for who I really was.